Hiya. I started this channel in order to slow down and really get to know the teams. And there's really no better way to get to know them than to get down in the trenches and follow them. And that's what I'm doing. One team at a time, 124 teams, 100 players per team. With one episode a day until I'm done. It should be around February 25th, 2060. But who's counting? So, anyways, there are some games you win and there are some games you lose. And some games turn into a test of what a team believes about itself. This game is one of those. Terry Puhl, where's Terry Puhl? Right here. Comes into Game 5 of the 1980 National League Championship Series as the Astros' perfect October instrument. Fast, clean, relentless, always in motion. By the end of the day, he goes 4 for 6. He scores 3 runs, steals a base, and sets a National League Championship Series record for hits with 10. Still, won't be enough. This game isn't really about who played the best. It's about who survives the last swing of chaos. The Astros are 6 out from the World Series with Nolan Ryan on the mound. The Phillies look dead in the water. Then baseball does what baseball does. It makes liars out of your certainty. Welcome back to the Astro 100. I'm documenting one game per player until I reach 100. Today's lens is Terry Puhl. Here. The game is October 12th, 1980, Phillies at Astros, Game 5 of the National League Championship Series at the Astrodome. Philadelphia wins it 8-7 in 10 innings. They take the series 3-2 and move on to the World Series. But if you only call this a loss, you're missing what makes it worth revisiting. This is also the day that Terry Puhl becomes impossible to ignore. He's at the center of this game from the first inning to the last out. And he plays like a man trying to drag the whole franchise into the future with him. The clubhouse temperatures are totally different. Both are hot. Philadelphia comes in carrying years of October scar tissue. They won the NL East in the late 1970s, but they kept getting stopped short. Plenty of people had picked them to fade again in 1980, before a late surge carried them past Montreal by just one game. Houston's the opposite kind of tense. This is the franchise's first ever postseason, the first division title in club history, and they just survived a brutal one-game playoff against Los Angeles after blowing a 3-game lead to the Dodgers on the weekend's final season. The Astros are confident but tired, while the Phillies are burdened but hardened. And that contrast is the engine of our whole script today. Around the rest of baseball, the bracket is already starting to narrow. Kansas City just swept New York in the American League Championship Series, finally getting over the Yankees and reaching its first World Series. So the winner here is not just winning a pennant fight. They're deciding who gets George Brett and the Royals next. And that matters to the tone here. This isn't some early round curiosity. The whole sport is down to a waiting room and one last National League fight. The cleanest subplot is this. First time Houston versus finally now Philadelphia. The Astros are new to the stage, but they're not naive. They have Joe Morgan and Nolan Ryan. They have a loud dome. And they have the feeling that the franchise has finally arrived. The Phillies, meanwhile, are carrying the reputation of a team that keeps coming close but never finishes. So the emotional stakes are different. Houston's trying to prove it belongs in baseball's top room. Philadelphia is trying to prove it can stop finding ways to fumble itself out of that room. Terry Puhl sits right in the middle of that tension because his style of play fits both stories. He's polished enough for the old school Phillies, but he also represents the young, upward-moving Astros future. There's also a darker Houston subplot hanging out over the week. The 1980 Astros were supposed to be terrifying, but then J.R. Richards suffered a stroke on July 30th. He'd started the season 10-4 with a 1.90 earned run average and started the All-Star game. Houston still won the division, but it did so with the sense that part of the original October blueprint had already been taken away. And that doesn't excuse what happened in Game 5, but it deepens the drama. Philadelphia is managed by Dallas Green. Green was a hard-edged Delaware baseball lifer who took over late in 1979, decided the Phillies had grown too soft, and then ran them with a much harsher more confrontational tone. His players didn't always enjoy him, but his methods worked. He became the first manager to lead the Phillies to a World Series title. Houston, still managed by Bill Verdon, who was the 1955 NL Rookie of the Year. Later, he was a respected fundamentals first manager who won a second Manager of the Year honor by taking the Astros to the brink of the World Series this year. Green is a drill sergeant, and Verdon is a baseball elder. That difference shows up in every bullpen move. So the listed starting pitchers tell you a lot before the first pitch is thrown. Houston has Nolan Ryan in his first season with the Astros after signing the sport's first multi-million dollar per year deal. In 1980, he helped carry Houston to its first division title with a 3.35 earned run average and 35 starts. Philadelphia counters not with a household ace, but a guy named Marty Bystrom, a 22-year-old September call-up from Coral Gables. He debuted September 7th, then went 5-0 with a 1.50 earned run average after being granted postseason eligibility because of Nino Espinosa's injury. Now here's the nerve of the game in one sentence. Houston has the flamethrower that everyone fears, while Philadelphia is banking on the rookie that nobody planned to need. And because the game gets so weird, the relief cast matters too. Larry Christensen, Ron Reed, Tug McGraw, and Dick Ruthven all become part of Philadelphia's survival plan. While on the Astros side, Joe Sambito, Ken Forsch, and Frank LaCourte all become part of the collapse and the resistance. That's one reason this game endures. It's not a two-man duel. It becomes a full organizational stress test. If you want star power, though, it's everywhere. In the starting alignments, you have Mike Schmidt for Philadelphia, Joe Morgan for Houston, with Nolan Ryan on the mound. Pete Rose is here, too. So he's not a Hall of Famer, but Pete Rose in 1980, which is its own category. The lineups feel like a collision between old authority and emergent urgency. As for rivalry in the usual regular season tense, there's not one. They lived in different divisions. But October can invent a rivalry faster than geography. The 1980 National League Championship Series did that. The final 4 games all went extra innings. The series went to the limit, and the emotional tone went from tense to delirious. This is less an old rivalry than the birth of a lasting baseball memory. And there's at least one clean human crossover between the two clubs. Greg Gross, who's now a Phillies pinch hit weapon by this series, had been drafted by Houston and debuted with the Astros in 1973. So when Gross lays down the bunt single that helps ignite the 8th inning comeback, it's not just a bench player doing a job. It's a former Astro helping crack the Astros' biggest game to that point open from the inside. Now, Terry Puhl, why this game fits him. Terry Puhl was born in Melville, Saskatchewan on July 8th, 1956. He was a hockey kid, a quarterback, and a championship-level amateur pitcher before Houston signed him after a blistering run in the 1976 Canadian National Midget Tournament. The funny part is that the Astros signed him as an outfielder, even though he actually never played outfield, ever. By 1980, that experiment had become one of the smartest bets the organization ever made. Puhl was already an all-star by 1978, and in 1980, he hit .282 with 151 hits, 24 doubles, 13 home runs, 27 stolen bases, and 55 RBI. He wasn't just a nice contact hitter. He was one of Houston's everyday structural pieces, and this game matters to him because it's the purest possible Terry Puhl game. He doesn't win it with a giant home run or a cinematic catch. He does it the Terry Puhl way. He leads off the game with a hit. He steals a base. He scores. He keeps pressuring, keeps finding the barrel, and keeps finding his way back on base. Specifically, in Game 5, he goes 4 for 6, 3 runs, and in the series, he goes 10 for 19, which was a record .526 batting average for the NLCS. That's the kind of line that should anchor a pennant-clinching effort. Instead, it becomes a noble losing effort, which somehow makes it more powerful for this project. Terry Puhl is not the man who failed. Terry Puhl is the man who did almost everything that a winning player could do, but then learned that October can still say no. Houston scores first again because, of course, Houston scores first again. Puhl opens the bottom of the first with a single, steals second, moves to third, then scores on Jose Cruz's double. That's the whole Terry Puhl thesis in 5 minutes. Contact, speed, pressure, run. Philadelphia answers in the second with Bob Boone, driving in Manny Trio and Gary Maddox. Suddenly, the Phillies lead 2-1. But even there, the game already feels unstable. Doesn't feel like a scoreboard that you can trust. But then the Astros start leaving clues. This game may hurt them later. In the second, Luis Pujols is thrown out at home plate on a relay after Craig Reynolds doubles. In the fifth, Enos Cabell is also cut down at the plate after a misplay but a sharp recovery from Pete Rose and Bob Boone. That's 2 Houston chances erased at home. 2 chances to make Ryan's life easier. 2 chances that just vanished. When you lose an elimination game by 1 run in extra innings, those plays aren't details, they're fingerprints. Meanwhile, Ryan looks like Ryan. He's overpowering. He's missing bats. He keeps the Phillies from stringing hits together. The game tilts back in Houston's favor in the 6th when Denny Walling reaches on Greg Ludzinski's 2-base error, and Alan Ashby, batting for Pujols, singles him home to tie it. Bystrom's done. The rookie didn't break exactly, but the game moved past where the part where rookies are supposed to survive on nerve. The 7th is where Houston seems to grab the pennant by the throat. Larry Christensen comes on for Philadelphia, and Puhl immediately strikes again. Cruz walks, Walling drives in the go-ahead run, then Christensen uncorks a wild pitch that scores Cruz. Ron Reed follows only to watch Art Howe triple home another run. Now it's 5-2 Astros. The dome is shaken. Ryan struck out 8, and the franchise is 6 outs from its first World Series. And that's the last moment in this game where the future looks orderly. Because then comes the 8th. That inning turns the whole memory into a legend. Boa singles. Boone hits a ball that looks like the start of a double play, but it skips behind Ryan and off his glove. Greg Gross bunts, and the bases are loaded. Then Pete Rose walks in a run. Moorhead brings home another run with the force play. Then Ken Forsch gets Schmidt, but Del Unser singles to tie it. Then Manny Trio triples home 2 more runs. In a blink, a 5-2 Astros lead is suddenly 7-5 Phillies lead. Bill Verdon later pointed to Boone's Astros manager Verdon pointed to Boone's ball off Ryan's glove as the real hinge of the game, and he was right. October sometimes disguises its decisive moments as something ordinary. Not a blast or a fight, not a miracle catch, just a ball that a great pitcher can't quite finish. Because this game refused to act like normal baseball, Houston answers immediately. In the bottom of the 8th, Rafael Landestoi and Jose Cruz drive and runs off Tug McGraw, and the game is tied 7-7. Buried in that inning is one of my favorite images of the whole day. Puhl reaches first with his record-setting 10th hit of the series. He looks up, realizes he just broke Pete Rose's NLCS record. Guess who's standing there? Pete Rose congratulates him at first base while the pennant is still hanging in the air. Now that's baseball at its strangest and best. Competition without amnesia. Pressure without a loss of respect. So the 9th goes scoreless, and so does Houston's bottom half. Then the 10th inning arrives, and Philadelphia gets one more punch in. Unser doubles, Maddox follows with a 2-out double to center, scoring Unser for the 8-7 lead. In the bottom half, Dick Ruthven retires Danny Heap, Terry Puhl, and Enos Cabell. And that's the brutal poetry of the whole thing. Puhl spends his whole day igniting Houston, but his last swing is one final chance to keep the season alive, and he doesn't get it done. There's no shame in that, but that's the frame that freezes. Now, what this meant for Philadelphia, this game meant escape. It meant they're no longer the talented club that stalled every October. They finally won a postseason series, and they would go on to beat Kansas City in 6 games for the first World Series title in franchise history. For Houston, this game meant heartbreak, but not fraudulence. Nobody watching honestly could have said the Astros didn't belong here. Joe Sambito and Alan Ashby both said, in essence, that the teams were about as evenly matched as two baseball clubs can be. That's exactly right. This wasn't exposure, it was devastation by inches. Now, for Terry Puhl specifically, the game became one of those strange legacy anchors, the day you can use to explain both his excellence and his relative historical invisibility. He wasn't loud or myth-sized. He was just very, very good. And in this series, he was better than good. He was extraordinary. If you want to explain Terry Puhl to a new viewer, you could do far worse than saying this. In the biggest game that Houston had played to that point, he looked entirely at home. Now, this is exactly the kind of game that creates a baseball fan because it contains the whole sport in one night. You get star power and weirdness, speed, defense, bullpen panic, bench pieces, veteran nerves, rookie nerves, a crowd that thinks it's going to witness history, and then history takes a left turn. You get a game where a bunt is huge, where a misplayed double ball changes everything, and where a player can be the best man on the field and still walk away crushed. That's baseball. It's not clean, it's cumulative, and it remembers everything. Sometimes it turns a single inning into a permanent scar. The best version of the post-game comes through reported quotes and retrospective accounts. Nolan Ryan later described it as the most emotional loss of his career. Verdon identified Boone's ball off Ryan's glove as the turning point. Sambito said you couldn't really separate the two teams, and Ashby said both clubs looked worthy of the World Series. On the winning side, Gary Maddox called his 10th inning hit the biggest thrill of his baseball life. And Del Unser, who scored the winning run, basically said the Astros forced the Phillies to shine by pushing them so hard. Now, that isn't boilerplate loser talk and winner talk. That's the language people use when they know they just lived through something larger than one box score. Terry Puhl's own tone afterward tells you almost everything. He didn't talk like a man making excuses. He talked like a player who realized in real time that sometimes destiny chooses the other dugout. Years later, he still remembers the sting, but also the odd beauty of Rose congratulating him at first base after the record-breaking hit. That's a useful way to close the emotional arc. Terry Puhl leaves the field beaten, but not diminished. Now, Philadelphia's season rolls on to the payoff. The Phillies beat the Royals in 6 games, win the first World Series in franchise history, and Mike Schmidt gets named World Series MVP. Houston's season stops right here, immediately, painfully, with nothing to do but sit in the clubhouse and understand how close you just came. For context, the franchise wouldn't reach the World Series until 2005, and they didn't win until 2017. Terry Puhl, though, keeps building a real career after this afternoon. He remains one of the defining Astros of the era, finishes his career with 1,361 hits, a .280 career batting average, 217 career steals, elite outfield defense, and one of the best fielding percentages ever National League outfielder ever posted. After his playing day, he moves into coaching. He serves with Canada's national program, becomes the first baseball head coach at the University of Houston at Victoria, and eventually lands where he belongs in our memory, the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame and the Astros Hall of Fame. So Game 5 isn't the end of his story. It's the clearest chapter in it. So next time we jump out of the Astrodome and into another sport, another decade, and another kind of greatness. Warrior 03, Neil Johnston, March 25, 1956. Today was a game about speed and survival. Next time, we get to a big man in an earlier basketball world where dominance looked different. The paint was crowded in a different way, and a star could still feel half forgotten if you don't go back to look for him. And that's what we're doing here. That was Astro 27 Terry Puhl, October 12, 1980. A record-setting day inside a losing cause, and exactly the kind of losing cause that tells you who a player was. Not careless, not excellent. All night inside one of the wildest elimination games baseball ever staged. And sometimes that's the whole reason to do a project like this one, to look directly at the players who are good enough for history, even when history gives the pennant to somebody else. Thanks for watching today, and I hope you tune in next time. Thank you.